everybody. This is Sasha, your life coach from Chicago, starting our segment Ordinary Extraordinary with Phil Blue, the guy, a friend of mine that I have met through Wright Foundation for the Realization of Human Potential. And this guy, you don't see him on TV, every day, maybe on Chinese TV. I don't know. Phil, can I see you on Chinese TV?
Yeah, you may.
Yeah, there you go. So yeah, if you go to China and you turn on TV, you'll see Phil there. Okay, but it doesn't matter. You see, there are so many so-called ordinary people in the world that we don't see on TV, but they are doing extraordinary things. And Phil is one of them. And I wanted to interview Phil today to share with us what he does in life that make me want to be with him as a friend. So Phil, how are you doing?
I'm doing great, Sasha. I really appreciate you having me on the show, and it's exciting to support in any way I can.
No problem. So what I want to do is my guests to share with the world how they came about to do what they do and be attractive as they are, and what led them to it, right? And then what obstacles they had on the way to that way of life they're living now, and just what it is that makes their heart sing. So how about you, man? Tell us a little bit about yourself and answer those questions in that format, if you could.
Well, I was thinking about this a lot recently, and one of the things that I noticed before I get into my own story is that there's an author on transformational learning and transformative learning in a book by Jack Mesereau. There's a chapter on it on Nelson Mandela and how he came to be who he was. And one of the things that they said was that it wasn't this big aha moment, but instead it was just a kind of they called it incremental transformation. And I think that's really key and really in line with what you're teaching here and what you're bringing about. And so I thought that was really relevant. I want to bring that in because I think what's really important is to look at the small day by day choices and keeping going.
Okay.
So my name is Dr. Phil Blue. I'm a professor of applied neuroscience at the Wright Graduate University, and I'm also a coach at the Wright Foundation for the Realization of Human Potential. And if you notice, both of the graduate school and the nonprofit, they both have the word Wright in it, and that's because they were started by Drs. Bob and Judith Wright. And that's part of what I wanted to talk about today was what helped me come to live a transformational life. And I think that the main thing was, primary factor was Dr. Bob Wright early on in my life and his influence and mentorship of me. But what was key to that was, first off, knowing that there was a group of people that were looking to support others in their transformation. But also what was really important in my journey was being unhappy with where I was at. I reached a point in high school where I had achieved all the goals I'd ever set out for myself and then some. And it was my senior year of high school. I was one of the top running backs in the area, one of the top students in my high school. And I won the overall top student award in a class of graduating class of 500 students. So I was really top at the time and really well known in my community. And it was the loneliest I'd ever been. So I'd achieved all my goals, become the football star, become the student athlete, and had all the friends. Was probably one of the more popular people in high school, but I was also the least happy. And it was at that time that I went and found Dr. Bob Wright. And what he said to me kind of changed my life. And it isn't what you'd think it would be, but he kind of just said to me a very normal thing. But he's you're a normal kid living in a very sheltered community who doesn't really know much about the world. Now, those aren't just breathtaking words or whatever, but I felt seen by Dr. Wright at the time. And it caused me to really introspect and look at myself and look at who I want to become. But also, and this is what I want to talk about today, is that it opened my eyes to a world beyond me and a world of possibility beyond myself. And one of the key things I remember early on with Dr. Wright was that he opened up my eyes to the fact that I could become more than I was. And I think this is one of the really important things about when we're talking about ordinary becoming extraordinary. It doesn't mean that I'm extraordinary. I don't need to start with extraordinary. I think the key assumption, and I think this is one assumption that we make at the Wright Foundation, but also that a lot of people make in like the human potential movement and humanistic psychology and existentialism, is that within us, like within human beings, is this innate capacity for transformation, and that there's a potential that most of us don't ever really get to tap fully. And it's kind of our life duty, our mission to like tap that. And that's kind of what I think led me to start living a life where I'm beginning to transform. And like the thing is, Sasha, like I think it's like just starting right now. You know, I've lived in like 4 different continents, and I speak 3 languages, and I got my PhD in China, and I've done stuff all over the world. But like, and we just started a business in China, by the way, as well. I don't know if I told you that.
Yeah, that's you started, so it's official now.
It's official. We got it.
Oh, so, man, that's so good.
But the thing is, I think the thing I want to point out is that all of those things are just really small, a series of small, ordinary choices. And one of the things I realized when I was living in Argentina was the importance of the ordinary days. In Argentina, I made all the mistakes that I would later come to fix in China. So in Argentina, I wanted to do grad school, I wanted to work, I wanted to make friends, I wanted to Spanish. And I did all of those, but I didn't do any of them really well. And except for learning Spanish. I kind of nailed my Spanish down there. But what I realized is that I was too in a hurry to transform. And I was too in a hurry to become the person I wanted to become, and not willing to just live in the moment and like kind of go with each day. And what I realized in Argentina that later helped serve me when I was learning Chinese and doing my PhD in China was that it's like the boring days that are the most important ones. And that was one of the things that kind of stuck with me. It's like, am I willing to keep myself going? And so I'll never forget, after Argentina, I went back to Chicago with kind of my tail between my legs. I hadn't got my master's out there, and I hadn't done what I wanted to do. Hadn't found the woman I loved or whatever. You know, I was expecting all these cool things to happen in South America. But when I went back to Chicago and talked with Dr. Wright, he said that I gained a lot of lessons from my failures in Argentina that I would later find out and reap. And I did end up finding out when I ended up getting a lot from those mistakes. And I couldn't have done in China without making the mistakes in Argentina. But there was another thing that Dr. Wright said to me was that the key is to keep yourself in the game. And he said, I wish you had just kept yourself in the game a little longer at grad school in South America. And I was like, wow, you know, like I didn't need to be, because the key with keeping yourself in the game is that it's not about being perfect. One of the things that was happening in Argentina was when a job wasn't perfect or when grad school wasn't perfect, I'd quit. I'd go to another job, or I just wouldn't go to grad school that day. And instead of just looking for perfection, which I think was a little young, it was key to just keep myself moving and then just to kind of trust the momentum and trust life that I would get where I needed to get. And I think that's the essence of like the ordinary becoming extraordinary, is really looking at not at the big moves, you know, like the big decisions and the aha moments, but more so looking at the everyday moves forward and the courage to stay in the game and keep going despite not knowing whether or not it's going to work out in the end. So that was kind of what I wanted to touch on to respond to your first question. Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, it does. It does. Like there's a couple of things that I heard that touched me right away that like I personally could always historically thought about, oh, I got to do something special so that I'll be recognized and then my life is done and over and like I have achieved everything. But then the ordinary thing starts happening, you know, and like that's boredom of the everyday completely destroys that feeling like of achievement. And then I don't know how to live in today. So what you said is like, you don't have to start with extraordinary and just appreciate the routine that wax on, wax off, right? That Dr. Bob always talks about, and finding that transformation within those little activities, right? Like just doing ordinary things and becoming immersed in them and like not quitting, like what he said. You are hoping to get perfect something, right? Perfect job, perfect girlfriend. And when it wasn't happening, you're like, oh, screw that, I'm leaving. You know, like give me another place where it will be given to me. Instead, what I'm understanding now, and by you saying that we have a business in China now, so you learned that it was many more steps before you get to that point, right? Before you get to say, oh yeah, this is something I wanted. And it was a lot of work before I got that, right? And you appreciate it more, right? You appreciate it more than it would be just like, oh, okay, tomorrow I'm scheduling an appointment with this person and everything is going to work out and that's it. I'm done, right? That appreciation, I think, is there that you begin to see. So what mistakes were the most glaring ones, like besides you wanting to be perfect right away? Or what obstacles did you have?
Well, the obstacles mainly presented themselves in Argentina. One of the obstacles was being in a hurry. Another obstacle was not being able to find a job in Argentina that I liked. Another obstacle was, I think another obstacle in Argentina was like heartbreak. And then another thing was just being really neurotic, like being young and neurotic and like having a bunch of thoughts and like self beat up. Like those are things that really take me out of my game. And historically, I've gotten a lot better at it.
And by neurotic, you mean like not being able to focus?
Yeah, not being able to focus, overthinking things. Like I'll never forget when I was on my patio trying to study psychology, like graduate level psychology in Buenos Aires. And I was just kept on thinking about other things and thinking about other people and wanting to contact them and start new projects and go on a motorcycle tour of Argentina and just tons of things I wanted to do. Now, granted, I wouldn't call those mistakes. I'd call them challenges. I think they were good challenges to have at the time because I was young, and I'm hoping that young people have those urges to go all over the world. I was proud of myself for having those urges, but at the same time, it prevented me from getting the most I could have from the education down in Buenos Aires. But I later made up for that in Beijing when I did my doctorate out there. But it did have a hard it presented a hard challenge for me. Another challenge was learning the language.
Of that.
Yeah. That'll be it. But that's not necessarily gonna be a challenge that the viewers can relate to. So I won't go into that. But then I think another challenge that comes up is the loneliness. Being on a transformational journey, the loneliness is really tricky. And what was really important throughout the journey was when Dr. Bob Wright would email me or check in on me, and I could express to him my loneliness, and that was really key. Was having someone there to support me and hear me.
Got it.
The transformation journey is often a lonely one. It doesn't need to be, but sometimes it can be. And I think one of the important things is willing to be lonely in my pursuits of becoming more myself in every moment.
Got it. Well, I guess you could feel lonely when everybody around you is sitting and not doing much about life, and you want to change yourself and the world, and then you feel like, hey, who's supporting me? So yeah, I absolutely can relate to you feeling lonely, but having people like Dr. Bob Wright and other people who are on a transformational journey is probably what keeps my fuel. So, and it looks like it's been helping you. So yeah. So tell me, what makes your heart sing now? Like what makes you want to wake up every day and keep going at this thing that you don't even know what's going to happen? Like, well, what makes
I love that question. Yeah. I love that question. I really appreciate you asking that. I think the thing that makes my heart sing right now, well, there's two things. One thing is, first, I love the name of your program, Ordinary Extraordinary, because one of the things I'm starting to do is just live more in the moment and realize like the incredible beauty in each moment. Like the beauty of us like talking right now about this, and like you with the background and stuff like that, and me in this like dark little cubicle room, and like just the beauty of the moment. That's part of what gets me going. But another thing that gets me going is I was recently in Greece on a sacred pilgrimage with the Wright Foundation, and that was Dr. Bob and Dr. Judith were leading us on it. And they took us to this temple, and it's called the Temple of Aphaia. It's on Crete. And it's a temple to the goddess before the goddess. And at this temple, I had this incredible connection with like the beyond or the divine or whatever you want to call it. But it was definitely a feminine force. And I felt a sense of acceptance and love that I had never felt before. And, or at least I hadn't felt in a long, long time. And it reminded me of like the capacity to feel loved and to be okay. And it was pretty incredible, the feeling. And I hope I never forget it. I probably will. But what gets me up in the morning is the pursuit of that love and that connection with the beyond, and hoping that I can help others do the same. And I think the beyond is within ourselves. I think that we have all of that within ourselves, and that helping others connect with themselves and know that they're okay, and to tap their potential and connect with something beyond themselves. And self-acceptance, self-love, self-advocacy, whatever you want to call it, but to help people connect with themselves and live great lives, but live lives of meaning and ones that they care about. And that kind of gets me up in the morning.
Got it.
Yeah.
Got it.
I was
Wow.
reading a book on existentialism. Well, it's actually a simple book. It's The Man's Search for Meaning by Viktor Frankl.
Mhm.
And, it's a really, really, really good read, worth reading. And in it, Viktor Frankl, who's like this Austrian-born Jew who was put in a concentration camp. His whole family was killed, but he happened to be a psychologist. And he later developed, or during the time, developed logotherapy and all of that. But what's more important was that he made this, he found meaning in like the most meaningless of situations. In like pure evil, in situations of pure evil, he found meaning. But one thing he said that's really resonating with me is that he realized that like a lot of the people who had hard times were people who were trying to change life so that it fit the way they wanted it to be. And he instead looked for what life wanted to tell him and looked for ways to honor life. And in a really beautiful quote, he quotes Dostoevsky, but he's talking about, is he worthy of his suffering? Is he worthy of his suffering? Can he really bear the suffering well? And I'll kind of close with this really cool, it's not a quote, but he talks about this little girl, and it's actually it's probably a woman, I think it was an adult, in the concentration camp, was about to die. And she was looking out of the window at this little tree, and there was like a little all she could see was the little glimpse of a tree. But she was kind of thanking the world for the suffering she got to receive, because it allowed her to have a more spiritual discipline, a more spiritual connection to the world. And I think what's really beautiful is that a lot of times we have just a few moments where we feel really connected with the world and with ourselves. And I'm hoping that I can have more connections like that throughout my life, and that I can facilitate other people doing the same.
Wow, cool, man. Thank you very much. Thank you. I really appreciate what you're sharing right now. So for me, what I heard, I think the most important thing is to appreciate those little moments, right?
Yeah.
And like you said, we're aiming for them to be in the future, but in reality, the only way to catch those moments is in the now, right? And I think I'm gonna quote you now all the time. You said a really cool thing, and I'm gonna like sort of summarize what you said. And you said something like this: the beyond is within. You know.
Yeah.
So that's what the goal is. You know, I don't have to look around the corner for a miracle. I am the miracle. And if I keep slowing myself down to get as close as possible to the present moment, I will discover that. And I hope that the God or the universe will send me more of those moments so I could be in awe of right here and right now, right?
Yeah, that's pretty cool.
All right, man. So thank you very much for coming up and starting this thing. And you're welcome to come again whenever we can schedule, you know, your busy schedule, flying back and forth, and say hi to everybody at the Wright Foundation, and see who else you can suggest, you know, to invite to this segment, and share with us this beautiful journey of transformation. All right.
Thank you so much, Sasha.
Thank you.
Good
Thank
luck
you very
on this.
much.
I'm just so happy you're doing this. It's really wonderful, and it's an honor to be a part of it.
Thank you. Thank you, man. You enjoy your day.
All right,
Happy holidays to you.
All right, you too. Take care.
Everybody, bye. Okay, bye, Phil.
Bye, Sasha.